Hi, I'm Jonas from matestack, and I want to show you how you can easily create reactive UIs in pure Ruby on top of your Rails applications. So we're going to jump right into some code here. If you're more interested in some theory, just check out docs.matestack.io. Okay, so let's start. We want to create a small to-do app in that example, and therefore I created a Rails 6 to-do app here. I've installed Webpacker and our gem, matestack-ui-core. I've created a small to-do model already, so that's nothing special, just some validations. And I've prepared some controller methods and some basic structure. So yeah, that's it for now. We have some routes in place already, so we see the to-do's index action here, and we see a hello world. So where does that coming from? So we're gonna check out the to-do's controller. Cool. Okay. We see something like matestack app, and we see some classes here. Well, first of all, matestack is built of 3 basic building blocks, and we have something called an app. That's probably best compared with a Rails layout. So in there, we're going to define a layout of our app, and we have something like a page, and a page is something similar to a Rails view. So and an app is going to yield that page just like a Rails layout would yield a view. And the thing is, we gonna write pure Ruby. So these are Ruby classes, and we're gonna see them in a bit. And so we're gonna define our UI in pure Ruby, and we just using these structures like app, pages, and we're gonna see in a bit also some components. Okay, so for now we should have a look where these classes are defined, and I've already prepared them. Within our app directory we see our matestack folder, and within that folder I've just came up with that structure. It's totally up to you, but I wanted to create a to-do app, so that's why I just called that to-do. And within that folder I've created an app RB, and so this is just a Ruby class, and it's inheriting from matestack UI app. So this is our base class coming with the gem. And you see a response method here, and you just see a yield page. You probably recognize that the page is going to be yielded here. So we jump right to the page, and there you go. So we have, again, this is now our index page, so that's what we use in our controller. And we see again the class inheriting now from matestack UI page, but we see a response method, and now we see a plain hello world here. So this is, if I just update that, and I'm just gonna reload the page here. So this is where this output is defined. So nothing too special actually, but that's pure Ruby until now, and we're just defining our UI in pure Ruby. Okay, so maybe just add some markup around our yield. So I've added a bootstrap using CDN, and therefore I can just go ahead and just type in container probably, and there you go. So I'm just gonna reload the page. So container should be written correctly. There you go. So we see the typical behavior of a bootstrap container with some margins. And you probably see already, so we're using something like a div. So that's a Ruby method call in that case. And that's referencing one of our core components. So matestack's shipping a lot of core components. They're just meant to render HTML tags at the end. So div is a good example of that. You can just add class ID, whatever you want to do, just to add some CSS classes. So you can use any CSS framework on top in order to style your views. The thing is, you write you implement your user interface in pure Ruby instead of writing HTML or ERB. And we're going to see in a bit how powerful that is. Okay, so now we have a basic layout here, and yeah, so we want to probably implement a small to-do form because we want to create to-dos and maybe toggle a done state of each to-do. That's what we want to do. Okay, so we head back to our index page, and well, we need a form in order to create to-dos. And I'm just going to get rid of that thing here. And matestack has a form component for that. So instead of using div or whatever, I'm just going to use form. And this form component needs some configuration. And yes, configuration is going to be passed in as a Ruby hash. And because we need some configuration, I'm going to use a helper method. Just wait a second here. So, and this method is defined then somewhere here. I'm just going to copy and paste that. There you go. And we're just returning a hash. So this is how, like, I'm cleaning up my implementation here a little bit. And the form is working quite similar to Rails forms, for example. So we need to tell the form for what object it should create a form. And in this case, it's going to be to do new because we have that active record model already created. And yeah, we want to use the path. Oops, what's going on here? I've got it messed up a little bit here. And there we go. Path, it's going to be the to-dos path. That's coming from our Rails routing here, just resources to-dos helper. And I want to use the post method. There you go. Okay, so this is a basic configuration a form needs in order to know where to submit data. So speaking of data, we need to collect data. So we're gonna use a form input. Here, that's it. Another component coming from the matestack-ui-core gem. And I'm gonna tell the form input that it should collect some data for special key, and that's going to be the title attribute of that model. And it should be text input. There you go. And we need a possibility to submit the form. So we're going to do that, and we're going to use a button component. So that's again a simple core component like div. In this case, it's just button, and we're going to tell the button that it should have a submit text on it. Okay, so we have form, and we use that helper to get the configuration. There you go, and just gonna render that. Yeah, nice. So that's looking a little bit weird. I'm just gonna add maybe small heading here. It's one to do. Oops. Text to do app demo. And yeah, I'm just gonna make some margin top here. I'm just gonna wrap that yield here. There you go. Now we have, yeah, a little bit better looking user interface. Okay, now we're gonna head back to our index, and we see we have a button submit here. And yeah, so we want to create to-dos, but we also want to render the existing to-dos. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create an unordered list here. And within this, I'm gonna iterate, yeah, to do all each to do. And for each, I'm gonna just go something like that. To do title. There you go. So it's going to be empty now because we don't have any to-dos in our database, so we should create one. Yeah, so I'm just going to create that here. Okay, obviously it didn't work. Okay, I totally forgot well, we set it up our routes already, but we need the create action. I just prepared that, and I'm going to activate that now. Okay, so the create action, which is targeted through classic Rails routing, is just gonna collect some to-do params, and this is what we're already used to, nothing new here. Yeah, so we're required to do and permit title. And using these models, these params, I'm gonna create a new to-do. If it's not working because it has some errors, I'm gonna render these errors in that format, and just with a negative status code. And if it's created, I just respond with a status code created. Okay, so this is how the create action is implemented, just a basic Rails implementation. Okay, so I'm going to submit that now. Okay, the form reset itself. So I know that indicated that the form submission was successful, but we don't see any of our to-dos. I have to reload the page. There you go. So we have our freshly created instance here. Probably we want to have a little bit more reactivity on our UI. So, I promised you we're gonna define our UIs in pure Ruby, but we're gonna define reactive UIs in pure Ruby, and we didn't see that much reactivity yet. So I'm gonna fix that. Well, I have to tell the form that it should emit an event, and like in a success event, it should emit something like success, whatever. It's up to you what you're gonna emit here. And we have a very fancy core component. It's called async, and async will help us to create a reactive list. We're telling the async component to re-render on an event, and this event is like success in this case. The async needs an ID to be identified because we can use multiple async on the same page. So it's gonna be whatever, like open to-dos list. There you go. And I'm gonna wrap, or I'm just gonna put the list implementation in that async. Okay, so the form should emit an event, and the async should re-render based on that event, and we should see a new a reactive list. So just gonna reload once because I need to get that up and running. Okay, it's still the same output, and I'm just gonna type in test2, and I just pressed enter, and I have a reactive UI without a full page reload or whatever. It just is like the async is re-rendering that part, and only that part of the UI based on a client-side event. By the way, that's working for server-side events pushed via action cable as well, so async doesn't care where this event is coming from, but that's a different topic. We're going to cover that in some future videos. Okay, so we probably want to add some more reactivity to the form, let's talk about the failure thing. If the form submission doesn't work, we want to emit something like that, failure, and we want to tell the user what's going wrong. And the form has two approaches towards that. So we've implemented already the failure callback, emitting a failure event. But even without that, the form is able to render the errors coming from the server response and like the active record errors. And we remember that the to-do validates the title. So if there you go. We submit this form now. Just going to reload the page, and I'm going to submit. I'm going to see can't be blank. And that's actually working even without the failure here. I'll just kind of get rid of that for now. Just make sure this is, this is working without any further configuration. So the form automatically recognizes, based on the server response, that this form input has an error, and this is coming from the Rails server side. So you don't have to implement any client-side validations. That's pretty great, and these server validations are rendered dynamically without a full browser page reload. And now if we want to go a step further and just use event submission in a failure case of the form, and we want to use our toggle component, let's say it should show on the failure event. There you go. And it should hide after 5,000 milliseconds. And it should just say something went wrong. Now I'm just going to enrich the default failure behavior of a form with some more, error rendering, and just refresh the page once, and then I'm going to submit again, and I have like this default string and something went wrong for 5 seconds, and it's gonna get, because the toggle component is told to show its content on an event, just like the async re-rendered on an event, and the toggle component is told to hide its content after 5,000 milliseconds. And for sure you can go here and just put in whatever class you want. I don't know a good Bootstrap class now, but I think you know what I mean. So you can of course style your like error rendering a bit better than I did here in the demo. But yeah, so this is like the dynamic behavior of a form. And as you can see, the form used events in order to communicate with other core components. So these are all our core components, and actually these are all, not all, but these are some of our special dynamic core components. They are written in Vue.js, but you don't have to write any JavaScript to get all that dynamic behavior, because you just use them writing pure Ruby, and you just configure how these dynamic Vue.js components should behave. And that is pretty great, because we saw already a lot of reactivity written in a few lines of Ruby without any JavaScript involved. Cool. Okay. So maybe we should go a step further, and we want to use, we want to have a button on each list element where we can click on it and to like mark that to do as done, for example. And we use something we call an action. So we have an action component which will target a Rails controller action. And so let's see how that works. Okay, so just need to maybe do something like that. So instead of just passing in text, I'm passing in a block. And now I'm just rendering the to-do title again. And and then I'm going to use the action component, and this action requires some configuration as well. I'm going to use the same approach as I used on the form. So action to do, I'm going to call it toggle done action config, whatever. It's a bit long, but you can do whatever you want. So this action should use a button which is telling toggle done, whatever. And we need to implement that method in order to give us some configuration. And yeah, this one is requiring a path. And speaking of a path, so this is again would like to target a Rails route here, and I've prepared that. So we have on each to do, I want to have the toggle done method via put, and on the controller I've already prepared that. So toggle done means just gonna look for the to-do using the param ID and just updating, like toggling the done attribute here. And I'm just doing the same thing. If any errors occurred, I'm just gonna render these, and if not, I'm just gonna render okay. So that's it for that side. So pure Rails here, and on the index I'm just gonna use then the how is it called? Toggle done. Toggle done path. And the thing is, this path helper would need toggle done to do path. Sorry, because it's gonna be the to do, and it's gonna need an ID. And we therefore, like, we got the ID here, so we use the ID, just pass in the to do ID to that method here, which is going to create the configuration for us. So I'm going to use that ID here and pass it into the Rails route helper. And then I need the method again, so pretty similar to the form config. And the method is going to be put, because we defined it to be like that. And if succeeded, same API as the form, I'm going to emit success here. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so we have our action in place. So let's see if we did that correctly. There you go. So now we see a button on each list item. And the thing is, we won't see any effect, so we should go here and just go for where done is full. So we only want to see the open to-dos kind of. Until now they are open, and I'm just gonna toggle the second one, and I expect this list to be re-rendered automatically because we're emitting the success event, and the async should react on the success event and re-render the page, the list here, and this one to do should not be rendered anymore because we toggled the none attribute. Okay, let's see. There you go. So I clicked the second test to do here, and the list re-rendered itself automatically on the client side without any browser reload or whatever. So that's again pretty great. No JavaScript involved for that kind of reactivity. It's just some lines of pure Ruby. Okay, so maybe we want to have even more reactivity. I just want to go for I want to clean up my view first of all. So because you have to recognize that this is just pure Ruby. I'm just gonna clean up that a little bit and just use split my response up in smaller chunks, so to have better maintainability and readability. And maybe the toggle kind of belongs to the form, so I put that down here, and then I call that now open to-dos list. There you go. And this open to-dos list will render that list. I'm going to just use that. So we have a to-do form config, and now I have a open to-dos list, and just put that down here. Just use a unique ID because I'm going to recreate this async again. So maybe I'm just duplicating that. I'm going to refactor in a bit. So now maybe this is the done to-dos list. So done to-dos list. We're done should be true. There you go. And now I have like duplicated code here. I don't like that. So I'm gonna create a to-do item. And this to-do item will be something like this li part. There you go. So it needs a to-do to be passed in. And now I can go on and just take that here and just use my method and just pass in the to-do, and it can do that again on that open to-do list. So now we have two lists, and open to-dos list, close to-do list, two asyncs reacting the same event, different IDs. Refactored our view a little bit to have like a good implementation, which should be easily to read. And I need to just use the close done to-do list, right? Yeah, there you go. So this is kind of our main response, and then we're just calling up the Ruby methods in order to create our user interface. Okay, so yeah, so we see maybe we should differentiate it a little bit. So maybe I'm gonna go just something like open to-dos and close to-dos. So two lists should be better readable now. Yeah, there you go. So we have open to-dos, close to-dos, and yeah, I can toggle the elements around. So there you go. So we just have we can shift the to-dos based on the done attribute, and the async will re-render the list, each list for itself with async HTTP requests in the background without any browser page reload required. Okay, so now we created reactive UI in pure Ruby, and we already cleaned it up a little bit. Yes, maybe we just gonna discover one more feature, because let's think of that we want to have two pages. So we want to have a page showing the open to-dos, and we want to have a page showing the closed to-dos, just for an example. And therefore I'm just gonna duplicate the page. So this is like index done, and index done is gonna be here. Cool. And so obviously we only need the done to-dos list. We don't need the form or whatever, so we can get rid of all of that here. We want to keep the rest of the structure to be able to toggle it from that list again. So we gonna get rid of the done to-dos list on that page, because this is the open to, so done, oops, we can get rid of that. Everything else stays the same. Index done to, there you go. Okay, so well, we need a second action, because the pages are defined on the action level. Index done. I'm just gonna go. So we're gonna use the same layout, same app in that case, and have two different pages within that scope of that app. Okay, and in order to like see these pages, well, of course we need a route here. So now it should be able to, okay, now this is our open to-dos. We only see our open to-dos, and we can create another one. There you go. And we can go for index done, probably. Oops, not index done. There, index to-dos, index done, right? To-dos, index done, there you go. I'm always messing that up. Loop. Okay, so we have close to-dos here. Okay, so obviously we don't have any closed to-dos because we toggle them all to be open. So we go back and just gonna toggle the second one, for example, and then we go to our to-dos, and there you go, we have our done or closed to do on that page. Okay, now, but the thing is that we don't want to use just type in the URLs. We want to have like navigation, and that's a special feature of matestack as well. So we can perform transitions between pages without a full browser page reload. That means we are gonna get that single page application feeling with like dynamic page transitions pretty easily. So that's what I want to show you now. Okay, so we're gonna go to our app definition where we see that container and the heading, and we gonna use our transition component and gonna tell the transition to go to the to-dos path. This is the typical index, and yeah, it should use a button to visualize. You can do whatever element you want to. Open to-dos, there you go, and then duplicate that, and I'm gonna use the index done to-dos path, if I get that correctly. Let's see. So done to-dos, and so we are gonna have two buttons with two different targets, and let's see if this is working. There you go, I've made it correctly. So we have two buttons here on our layout, and we are currently on the closed to-dos, and I'm gonna navigate to the open to-dos. There you go, and I'm gonna go back to done. So you see we have dynamic page transition, so there is no full browser page reload done here. It's just like the matestack's taking care of replacing the DOM with the desired page content without reloading the whole layout. And yeah, that's of course a performance advantage, navigating through pages. And that's pretty great because you saw it's just like, that's it. Nothing more required at your end to implement, because the transition component already know, like in combination with an app, the transition component already know how to behave here, and like that's a great thing for us because we can wipe out all the JavaScript required for these basic dynamic behaviors. Yeah, so you saw already a lot of reactivity implemented without any JavaScript in pure Ruby, and in our opinion even like really readable and maintainable code. And talking about readability and maintainability, the last thing I want to show you now in that really quick walkthrough through matestack's features is that you can even go a step further, because let's have a look at the index and the index done. So two pages, they're kind of sharing this to-do item here. In this case, it's just an li element, so you probably want to have something more fancy here, but the thing is we have that on both pages. And I've already told you matestack is based on three basic building blocks: apps, pages, and components. So we saw all of them. We saw an app, we saw a page, and we saw the usage of core components like heading, async, UL. They're all core components. Well, UL is an easy core component, just rendering the UL tag. Async is doing much more than that, but these are core components. But the thing is, you can create your own components on top and just use them side by side with our core components. And we just want to use put that into a custom component. And well, I've prepared already something, because you have to register your own components in order to being able to use them. And all the core components are already registered in the core, so you don't have to register them, but you have to register your own core components. And this is a components registry module, and I've decided here already that I want to create a class called components to do item, and I want to use that component within our responses on our page, for example, as a to do item. So you can, just think of any name here. It's up to you. And you need to include this registry once on your application controller, or wherever you like, on what scope you might want to include that. But I want to have that registry included on all of our controllers. Okay, so now the last thing is I need to implement this component here, right? So I'm just going to create a new file, to do item .rb, and that's going to be components to do item, and now it's inheriting from matestack-ui component, so not a page, not an app, it's a component. And this one is going to have a response as well, exactly the same structure as you saw on apps and pages. And now I'm just going to use that thing here, just going to copy that over. There you go, so we have that here. So we need obviously a to-do, so that's a special thing of components. Just going to mark, tell the component it needs a to-do in order to work properly. So we're going to see what that looks like in a bit. We need the action as well. So the action configuration, to do item. So we have everything encapsulated what the item needs to work properly. And now I should be able to get rid of that here on the page. So this is the index page. And now I'm just gonna do something like that, because components, they require you to pass in hashes. So that's the only difference. So to do item, well, I've registered, as you probably remember, to do item with this method name here. So that's why I'm going to use to do item again. And let's see, I'm going to the open to do's. Let's see if everything worked correctly. Okay, I'm just going to reload to make sure everything is up and running. Okay, so we see exactly the same output, what we're using on our own component now. So we can go and just check if we're really using that code here. There you go, so we have that implementation in place. And the thing is, if you would, for example, forget to pass in this to do, the component will complain, and you get a method error called required property to do is missing, and you know exactly what you did wrong. So that's a good thing of our custom components. And we're gonna reuse that, so we get rid of that on the done to do page as well. There you go, done to do. So this should work again, the done to do should work as well. And we can toggle that, go here and toggle, so everything, we should have done everything. There you go. So this is like how you can even improve your implementation even further with your own custom components written in pure Ruby. So I think that's it for now. I hope you saw already how great that is, like that you can implement your reactive UIs in pure Ruby and even create a really maintainable and readable code structure. And so we have a lot of more features to offer. We're going to cover that in future videos. We already covered a lot of that in our docs. I hope you enjoyed the quick walkthrough, and I'm happy to hear your feedback. Just maybe share that video. Give us a start on GitHub. It's just matestack-ui-core. And if you want to get in touch, just look at our webpage. Our email addresses are there. So we're happy to hear from you, and have fun trying out Matestack. Thanks a lot.